The empire has struck back. And I use that reference not just because I'm a nerd and I'm prone to those sorts of things, but because, with all the talk of invading basically every other country in our hemisphere, it's feeling more appropriate. And it really does feel like what we're all up against now that Donald Trump has been sworn in once again. He was flanked by all of the richest right-wingers in the country. The machinery of the status quo is fully behind him, literally behind him as it's happening. And we're not gonna do what we normally would do. We're not gonna just play a bunch of bits of his speech. You already know what he said, it's horrible, it's blood-soaked and all that. We're just gonna focus on what he did, because that's what really matters right now, okay? He is back in power. And he has got his grubby little makeup smeared short little fingers around America's throat. He has, and I apologize, forced America into a dressing room, and now he's gonna do what he does. The crimes and the corruption will now begin, and they come in a variety of forms. We're gonna be focusing first on the executive orders. He began his term with dozens and dozens and dozens of them, basically all of them right out of Project 2025, as we said. It was one of the many things we were right about. And so the first we're gonna talk about is a variety of executive orders designed to systematically end immigration in the United States, effectively just end the concept of people being able to come into our country, except in the form of H-1B visas. If they can bring in people and hold over their head the idea that they might be deported if they ever raise their voices and pay them not much and take a job away from someone in America, then they're perfectly fine for that. But other than that, no immigration anymore. By the way, as this is going on, the mass deportation scheme is spooling up. It could begin at literally any moment. So we're gonna be talking about executive orders on the show, but I want you to bear in mind, regardless of what little town or city you might be in across America, it's entirely possible that cops and National Guard and maybe members of our armed forces will roll into your town or city and begin knocking on doors and asking to see people's papers, because that is now the country we live in. So let's see, what did he do when it came to immigration? So he declared an overall national emergency, which wouldn't have really made much sense a couple years ago. It makes even less sense now that the border is effectively down to the same levels of crossings that it was at the end of his first term. But of course, for symbolic purposes, for distraction purposes, he has to pretend that we're being invaded at the border. He signed an order designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. He restarted the border wall construction. He ended refugee admissions entirely for 3 months. Doesn't matter where you're fleeing from, doesn't matter if you'll die if you don't get into America, you can't come, or we're closed. He killed the app that made scheduling migrant hearings much less chaotic. He did, in short, just everything. Every twisted racist fantasy that Stephen Miller has ever had, he did all of those things simultaneously. And while everything that we're gonna talk about in this block is gonna be a reminder that elections most certainly have consequences, I think this last 24 hours has been the clearest example of that in the many years that I and you, Brett, have been covering the news. Obviously, politics is consequential. Obviously, elections have consequences. But I don't know if they've ever had this many consequences in a single day. Oh, by the way, he also signed an executive order to end birthright citizenship, a thing that of course he can't do, but he signed the executive order anyway, seeking to reinterpret the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which very clearly in the text, there's no possible dispute, says that if you're born in America, you're a citizen. Obviously, that's dead. Now, let's also point out for those of you who might not have been following American politics for very long, even just a few years ago, calling for the end of birthright citizenship would have been a thing that only the most deranged xenophobes on 4chan would even talk about in forum posts. And we thought, oh, maybe that's a thing that he'll do at some point during his term. He'll do his insane border stuff, and then at some point, because of inflation, he'll roll this out as a new way to distract people. Nope. Day one instantly. But in hindsight, it really makes a lot of sense, because what he is delivering to these people is, and I'm just gonna say it, I know we're not supposed to, but it's feeling pretty clear, fascism. And in fascism, there's in-groups and out-groups. And how would it be a successful fascist movement if he didn't come in the door revoking citizenship from literally millions of Americans? So the many followers of his, the many voters of his are soon gonna have to deal with rising prices and the failure of his policies and trillions of their dollars being transferred to the richest people in the country. But they will be able to console themselves with the fact that some of the other people that they hate, that they're jealous of, that they've been taught to despise, are suffering more. And maybe they'll even be ejected out of the only country they've ever lived in. So obviously there is a lot going on. Brett, what do you make of it? How you feeling?
Well, the thing for me, it's definitely very depressing. And it's very, I was gonna say saddening, but that's the same thing. I'm trying to think of other emotions. Like I'm not angry yet. I'm just sad. Like, yeah, the thing that I focus on the most is, there's a lot to focus on, but the one that keeps coming back to me is like all the people like that voted for Trump. There were things they wanted, and all the stuff he's doing isn't actually gonna make your life better. It might make you happier because he's convinced you who's at fault for all that's wrong in your life. And right now, when you see him sign the executive order, you're like, yeah. But at the end of the day, like when he gets rid of all migrants from America, your life's not gonna be better and you're not gonna be happier, because it's not gonna bring down the cost of housing. It's not gonna bring down the cost of food. It's not gonna bring down it's
literally gonna raise the cost of both of those things.
Right. That's the thing. And for those racists out there, you aren't gonna be able to look out the window into a field of undocumented workers and feel better than them. Like it's robbing from you that very pure racist moment where you're like, oh, I can see the people I'm better than because I'm racist. Like, I'm just trying to find ways to communicate with these folks.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, this is the sort of thing that's going to be handed over, and as we're going to show, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that not only isn't going to make their life better, but as we've said, is going to literally make their life worse. But they need a smokescreen, and so they're going to provide the smokescreen. But on this though, like I respond with a little bit of sarcasm and stuff like that. But this is the darkest version that was hypothesized about what he would do in regard to immigration. It's literally going to be soldiers in the streets. It's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars being spent just to harm our country, just to weaken our economy. And just to weaken us in the eyes of basically everyone around the world. We are gonna spend, half of a Green New Deal just to make ourselves weaker. That's what he is doing. Not saying, okay, we'll eventually cover some of the stuff that he said too. This is what he is actually doing already. Right, and some of it will fail because it's wildly unconstitutional, but much of it will go forward.
Like Trump's not that smart at government stuff. He's very lazy in that respect. But like the one bit of calculus he always does is, what can I get away with? And right now he can get away with everything. And so and this weird deranged sense of power that Trump has, it's very simple and straightforward, and he doesn't really have to do much to turn America into that country you just described. And he said that he's gonna do it. And that sense of joy that he's gonna get from actually making that happen. Because like, what is he gonna do? He's running a framework for something that's in Project 2025, the end of birthright citizenship. He's running that past the Supreme Court, like that's where it's headed. And when it heads there, like they already undid a major protection early without Trump really having to do anything besides give them jobs, which was the right to choose. And this is another thing that's like so fundamentally insane. And I just don't think enough people in America, the sad part is they don't care enough about immigration if they're the opposition. Like I just don't think it raises to that level that people are going to fight against it enough, because they're like, we're not immigrants.
Yeah, man, maybe they won't. I do think that they will feel the effect that this will have on the economy. It's gonna hurt businesses, it's gonna drive up prices. Again, that's all clear, and now it's going to happen, and they are gonna suffer the consequences of that. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.